Good morning and welcome to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent. With me, Chris Price. Joining me this week is Dominic Deeson, an ambassador for the Institute of Directors in Kent and a publisher at web development agency Deeson Group. We'll be discussing the way Black Friday is changing retail in the run-up to Christmas. First though, we're examining the autumn statement and how it will affect the economy of Kent. It was said by many that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, had little wriggle room for rabbits out of the hat after forecasted borrowing increased by £58.7 billion over the next 5 years, as a direct result of the decision to leave the EU, according to the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility. But were there key policy areas missed by the government? With a roundup of what was said, here's Evangeline Dryden.
As the leaves turn orange, we know it's time for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to deliver his autumn statement. But what is in store for Britain?
Many people will be crunching numbers after Philip Hammond revealed the autumn statement on Wednesday. Since the Brexit vote, the statement has been highly anticipated due to the uncertainty in our economy. But what does this mean to you?
First of all, the national living wage will rise from £7.20 to £7.50 an hour for over 25-year-olds. However, it was anticipated to be higher, and is it really enough to live on? The number of housing is also set to increase. Hammond has promised 40,000 new affordable homes using £1.4 billion, and another £2.3 billion will be invested in infrastructure for an extra 100,000 new homes. For drivers, fuel duty will be frozen for a 7th year in a row. The Chancellor claims this will save the average car driver £130 and the average van driver £350 a year. And what about taxes? Corporation tax is to be reduced to 17%. The personal allowance will rise to £12,500. Insurance premium tax is to go up from 10% to 12%, and there will be tax breaks for small businesses in rural areas. But what about Kent? Here's our political editor, Paul Francis.
One of the very interesting pronouncements that Philip Hammond did make was that there is going to be this fund for existing grammar schools to expand, and he set aside £200 million for this particular fund, which could be used by existing grammars to open up annexes or satellites, as we've already seen in one part of Kent in Sevenoaks. Now, a lot of people, a lot of the Conservative backbenchers will be delighted by this sort of thing, but for Labour the issue is how can you find this amount of money for grammar schools but not invest any more in things like adult social care, which we know is a huge demographic pressure in a county like Kent.
After the autumn statement, it will be the ordinary families across Kent left wondering what the future will hold. This is Evangeline Dryden for KMTV.
So, Dominic, you represent directors on boards of companies across Kent as part of the IOD. What was your take on the autumn statement?
I think it was a very light statement in terms of there wasn't a huge amount of substance in there. Of course, the Chancellor and the government would argue that's mainly because of the deficit, because they haven't got the money. And the previous Chancellor promised that the deficit was going to be eliminated by 2020. Well, nobody really believed that, and in fact I think that's going to continue to be put back for a long time to come. There is also the complete unknown about Brexit, and I think Philip Hammond perhaps quite sensibly is making more provision for Brexit, and in fact it's going to have a negative effect on the economy. But until we know what kind of deal we've got, and his boss, and ultimately all our political boss in terms of Theresa May, won't tell him. To a certain extent she doesn't know. She's not the best communicator in the world. And I never quite know with Theresa May whether she doesn't want to communicate or won't communicate. But over Brexit, that's what's causing a lot of confusion amongst business people, lack of confidence. It is a cliche that businesses like to know where they're going, they like to know what's happening. And Brexit is that huge elephant in the room at the moment that nobody knows. So it was a very light statement. The amount of money that there were certain key areas like infrastructure and housing, which I think everybody really welcomes. The problem is the sums concerned were tiny. And once you've spread those sums, I know we're talking about billions of pounds, and once you've spread those across the country, what they're going to mean for each region or even each county, such as Kent, is going to be very small, I fear.
What was there anything that you think that the Chancellor did get particularly right, given the circumstances?
Yeah, what I think business generally will have thoroughly welcomed was the confirmation of the reduction of the corporation tax rate to 17%. which makes us one of, if not the lowest, in the developed world. And that obviously is a very good pre-Brexit move in terms of if we are going to have a hard bump as a result of Brexit, and whether international company and multinational businesses in particular are going to waver a bit on whether Britain is a good place to invest in, a good place to have their headquarters or substantial numbers of staff here, that might make them think twice. It's always about the environment that governments create for business to operate in.
But of course, there has been some criticism as well for the government that certain areas, there wasn't much announced for spending for the NHS, and there wasn't any announcements about particularly social care, which is obviously a big area where spending is tight. Was there too much focus maybe from the Chancellor on trying to make business happy in light of the Brexit negotiations?
I do agree about the lack of spending on social care and the NHS, and I think most people do. That is a major concern. And as our population gets older, it's the usual cliche that we need more of both of those. The NHS demand for the NHS is not going to go down; it's going to increase. It's going to continue increasing, as is the demand for social care. I think what the recognition again in that autumn statement is to borrow Bill Clinton's campaigns. It's all about the economy, stupid. And that's exactly with Brexit. It is about the economy. And as a business person myself, and having never had any faith in government and how they respond to business and what business needs, it should be business people who are running the Brexit negotiations. Now, whenever I say that to an MP, they'll say to me, but we're the elected representatives. But most of you don't know a darn thing about business. And you don't actually know what the business community needs or wants. But at Philip Hammond, that's why this autumn statement looks as it did. Everything at the moment is directed to Brexit and what the effect is going to be, that none of us know what that effect is going to be.
Sure. He didn't, as was sort of said, he didn't really have the chance to sort of have a rabbit out of the hat moment, which sort of defined pretty much every budget or autumn statement delivered by the previous Chancellor, George Osborne. But one of the big things that he did announce was this National Productivity Investment Fund, which is 23 billion to spend on, new 23 billion that's going to be borrowed to spend over the next 5 years. Are there any areas in Kent where you would like to see some of that money spent that you think would really sort of kick-start growth?
This is a very difficult one. We do have productivity that is lagging significantly behind other countries, particularly Germany, for example, which is the powerhouse of Europe as far as productivity and how much each individual worker produces and the GDP of the country and so forth. It also depends on how you define productivity. And if you talk to 5 different economists and business people, you will get 5 different answers as to what productivity is and how you actually address the issue. As far as Kent is concerned, we, like the rest of the UK, we have a productivity problem. I think there are various measures that can be brought in, and this is one thing I think, as far as Theresa May's idea was to have more worker representation on boards. Now, unfortunately, in my view, the government's backtracked from that, and they said, well, no, we're not going to make it compulsory. And I think a little bit, well, if you don't actually make it compulsory, what's going to happen? Or these things tend to take, without some kind of compulsion, they take an awful long time. There will be, I come from a small business background, there will be colleagues on larger companies saying, no, this isn't the way it should be done. But there has to be a closer union and a closer communication between management and the staff. A lot of small businesses these days, and particularly in my field, in the digital field, because we have a constant shortage of employees, you have to be a lot more constructive about how you recruit people, how you keep them, because our staff, they have a lot of options. There are a lot of other places they can be going. It's also not just about money. We had a meeting a few weeks ago in the IOD in Kent with Phil Eckersley, the regional representative for the Bank of England. And out of the Bank of England comes an awful lot about pay all the time. The modern workplace isn't just about pay. Pay is extremely important, of course it is. It's what puts food on the table, keeps a roof over all our heads. But in the modern workplace, there's a lot of other things going on other than pay. People aren't just there to earn money. It's the whole experience, the work experience.
Sure. Another part of the autumn statement which might help Kent perhaps is the announced extra spending on research and development, another 2 billion there. Now, I imagine there are some parts of Kent that are going to be really, really excited about that prospect, and members of the IOD as well.
Absolutely, and that's something we do desperately need is ongoing investment in research and development and technology and so forth, because those are the future. Places like Kent Science Park and Discovery Park at Sandwich and so forth, we need more of those, and we need to develop. In Kent, we've had it historically, and it's, if anything, has got worse in recent times. We have a lack of manufacturing. Kent is made up of a lot of very small businesses. There are very few large businesses or even medium-sized businesses in the county, and anything that can address that, so we get a better mix of businesses and organisations. And it is, again, someone Invest in Kent, Locate in Kent, will say that's about bringing new business into the county as well as developing what we've already got here. So it's a variety of initiatives to make the county as attractive as possible to investors and employers.
And very quickly, the autumn statement is now going to be no longer. It's actually there's going to be a spring statement just addressing the
spring
OBR
becomes
predictions.
autumn, or autumn becomes spring.
Is there any anything to that? I mean, is that a way of perhaps not having to sort of change anything fiscally too much, giving businesses that year gap to not have to worry about any big fiscal changes? I don't know.
No, I wasn't quite sure what the logic was. He sort of threw this in at the end as a little thing. First of all, I thought he was going to resign, because I think he used the word something like, "This will be my last autumn statement." And I was sitting there thinking, blimey, you've only just started in the job. But then he explained it was about swapping around between spring and autumn. I think everyone was a bit surprised by it. It was Jeremy Corbyn's face on the benches was an absolute picture, and I think he thought this is something to really have a go at them about. You don't even know when you're going to have a budget now, and why are we changing it? I think we'll see how that pans out, and whether it really is a significant change or not.
Sure. Brilliant. All right, Dominic, thanks very much for your thoughts on that. Moving on now, we're looking at the retail trend, which has changed the way consumers approach their Christmas shopping. A little more than 5 years ago, it was only a select few mums and dads able to look down their noses at friends who had left it until the last minute to do their festive shopping. Now everyone is in on the act, as the US shopping phenomenon Black Friday has firmly made its mark here in the UK. Taking place the day after Thanksgiving on the last Friday in November, retailers offer a range of discounts to entice families into spending as much as humanly possible. But all that glitters is not gold for both shoppers and shops, it seems, as Duarte Diaz found out.
By this time of the year, you probably won't be surprised to see a great number of shops with heavy discounts. Black Friday brings about the usual discount frenzy to online and retail shopping, which you'll be familiar with. I went to John Lewis in Bluewater to find out more about their views on the importance of Black Friday.
Black Friday now is part and parcel of how customers shop. So it's been with us for 3 or 4 years. Consumer behaviour has changed enormously because of online trading. But the role of the shop has almost become more important, because when people do come shopping, they're looking for an experience, something that's worth coming into the shop for. The internet's wonderful, but it's rather overwhelming in choice, and people want someone to say which product should I buy that fits my needs, and the human beings in shops do that best.
In 2015, it was estimated that 1 in 5 Britons made purchases on Black Friday week, and a total of £1 billion were spent in the UK on Black Friday alone, which is an increase of 35% from the previous year.
But these shopping holidays are not as straightforward as they may seem. There have been some suggestions of scams as well as fake discounts. Let's take a look at this computer part as an example. It's a motherboard often sought out by PC gamers. On Amazon, the price seems to be reduced to £150, saving you about 30%. Seems like a good discount, right? But if you look at the price history on another website, you can see the same product usually sells for £130 for most of the year, and the price was tinkered ahead of Black Friday. Doesn't seem like a good deal anymore, does it?
However, there's an argument for shops not to do anything for Black Friday to begin with. The chief executive of the Dover Chamber of Commerce explained why.
So I think it's important in assessing Black Fridays to say, for any retailer to say, is this what I want to be? You have to think what is long-term, what is closest to my customers, how I can serve them best, and how I can do it better than my competitors. And a lot of that is having the trust, having the brand, having the year-round quality, not just the 1 day a year or 5 days a year price.
So in the end, whether you're a shop owner or just a customer, the best thing to do is to think twice before joining in on the Black Friday trend. Duarte Diaz reporting for KMTV.
So, Dominic, it's the shopping craze which has taken over Britain, it seems. Are you a Black Friday shopper?
No, I suppose I'm a classic male in terms of My wife is the one who is the great shopper in our household. And in those Black Friday is another attempt by retailers who are under incredibly competitive pressure to provide another opportunity to get goods out there in front of customers and at the right kind of prices. But there are some retailers, it was interesting to note that some retailers this year, some key retailers decided not to participate. And I think, again, coming back to the previous item we talked about, I think Brexit is a possible reason for whether Black Friday and discounting and so forth.
It's an American phenomenon, Black Friday, but why has the environment changed to make, you know, a big event like that something that we're now embracing in the UK?
I think it's experimentation. I mean, like all good businesses, you have to constantly experiment. You have to constantly be innovative. You have to constantly be looking at new ideas, new ways of doing things and so forth. Whether we should all be always following the Americans, I'm not quite sure, but a lot of trends do start in America. And I think a lot of, as I say, it still is an experiment for a lot of retailers. And some retailers, it was interesting to note this year, decided not to do it. And something that was becoming established in the retail calendar in terms of Black Friday was a given. It'll be interesting to see going forward whether this has been a flash in the pan over the last few years or whether it is something that we get on a more permanent basis.
And one of the reasons perhaps that it might be a flash in the pan is this concern over whether or not the offers that you're getting are actually, you know, true. I mean, Duarte mentioned in his report that, you know, some of the deals aren't what they seem and are sometimes offered at the same price earlier in the year. I mean, what damage does that do for retail, for retailers, if consumers aren't, you know, believing the offers?
Absolutely. I mean, credibility in business is everything. It always is something of an issue, not just around Black Friday, but in all kinds of sales and discounts and this kind of thing. And I know the Office of Fair Trading in recent years has been taking more action with retailers in terms of setting the boundaries and by which you must have an item at a certain price before you can discount it and say it's a sale item. But that is a critical point. Also, it is going to be interesting. We all know there is price inflation coming next year. I mean, the Bank of England forecast for next year is inflation is going to start taking off again, and retailers that perhaps are holding back on price increases, this is their last chance to get people out there spending before inevitably almost price increases start coming through into retailers of all kinds.
But should the focus be on you know, a Black Friday or Black Friday weekend, or, you know, are retailers missing a trick on perhaps, you know, is there any chance that over focusing on something like this is actually damaging their ability to attract customers for the rest of the year, or are they not, you know, not focusing on the quality they have for the rest of the year?
Absolutely, and to a certain extent, it was initially, I think, seen as a slightly disingenuous move in terms of there is always that build up towards Christmas. Spending for most retailers peaks at Christmas. It's that period before Christmas is what keeps a lot of retailers going for the rest of the year. And it just seems slightly disingenuous to a certain extent when you know you've got guaranteed business, guaranteed quote unquote, coming through the door, why you would then discount. But the problem is you've got, in a competitive market, one of your main competitors discounts. What are you going to do? Are you going to do nothing? Are you going to watch all the business over that weekend, walk over to them because you're not offering anything? And it's that usual market manoeuvring and about market share and so forth.
And the other thing is with Black Friday, we tend to think of the big retailers taking part in this. But briefly, you know, should small retailers be trying to get on board, or have they got on board in the way that perhaps they could have done to make the most of the, you know, the festival, as it were?
I think that is purely a business decision in terms of whether it's affordable for them. There's always an upside and a downside. You make more sales, but your margins are decreased. Margins in retail are not good in the first place. So if you're squashing your own margins and making that tighter and tighter, in theory you're getting the volume through, which means you get the money through. But if you're not really making the money, because, you know, it's the old thing about profit actually is what it's all about. That's what really matters. And particularly for smaller retailers, profit is very important. It's important for everyone. But they have to take that judgment on whether they can join in on a Black Friday or not.
Brilliant. Thank you. Dominic, thanks very much for your discussion today and for helping out with the show. That's it for the latest edition of Chris & Co. Our show looking at the business effects, the business issues in Kent. Keep up to date with everything on kentbusiness.co.uk. But for now, thanks for watching. Have a very good day. Bye.